joining me now is my next guest. Her name is Flora Kyondo, and she's from the Kenya Red Cross Training Institute. Karibu sana. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Asante.
You're most welcome. I hope you're well.
I am.
And we want to talk about safety tips, particularly life-saving items that you need to have in your home emergency kit. Now, almost everyone will need to use a first aid kit at some point in their lives at home. But do we actually know what's most important, especially to have? And do you even have a home emergency kit? Do you know what's supposed to be in it, even in your car? And that's exactly what we want to talk about now with Flora. And so we often hear about a first aid kit, maybe fewer people have heard about an emergency kit. Is there a difference between the two? How do they differ in as far as what items are included?
I would say, I think, first of all, we're talking about first aid kits, just being merely for first aid. But we're also talking about people getting more prepared for emergencies, especially now that we have maybe flooding. And so you need to also have some measure of preparedness, so that at least should you be displaced, at least you have some stuff that you can use. And so basic first aid kits, you know, are what we use for first aid, and they may not have a lot of things that you need as a family. So you need to also customize, if you like, your first aid kit for home use or for emergency use. And so you may have slightly more items, but I would say emergency is the same, because it basically means that something has happened suddenly and you need to deal with it at that moment.
So an emergency kit could include torches,
yes,
maybe some canned food, blankets,
yes,
that type of thing.
At least you should be able to take care of your family for 72 hours at the most after an upheaval of some sorts, maybe a fire, or you've had your home flooded in, like what is happening currently. So you would look at your home and say, okay, I have a basic first aid kit. I can deal with small wounds. I can deal with small burns. I can deal with, you know, just small emergencies within the home. But if I'm going to be out of the home for 3 days, I need to be able to think clearly. If I'm talking about people that need medication, especially people that are chronically ill, maybe I have someone in my home who has asthma or someone who is diabetic, and you know, you need to be able to pack this, or I need prescription glasses, or even sanitary, if you have, you know, that kind of person in your home. And if you have a baby, you may need to think about baby food, or maybe formula for the baby. So you need to be able to think, should this happen and I should be away from my home, by the time emergency services get organized enough to start giving me aid, what is it that I can do for myself? Do I have a blanket? Do I have sufficient warm clothing for my family? So that sort of thought process is good for you. Can I be able to light my house if power goes out for 3 days, for example? So it's good to have a flashlight that you can charge, or that uses batteries, or that uses very little light, like the LED flashlight. It uses very little battery. So if you have this kind of things within your home, you should be sufficiently prepared.
So it's not just and you need to be checking in on the items and kind of reviewing them and changing them out, because you could very well prepare your emergency kit, you know, today, the 2nd of January, but then, you know, you don't suffer an emergency until, I don't know, August.
True.
Hopefully you've been checking in your supplies, that you're not there with expired food, or kumbe your batteries were leaking or something had happened. So you need to be checking on it.
You need to be checking. One of the things that happens regularly when we go, for example, to companies or offices, check on the kits, you find items that expired. One of the things that we find, and we find so alarming, is to find medication in the kit. We don't advocate for that, because you find maybe it was removed from a bigger tin, put into a small envelope, there's no date on it. And we are very cautious about, you know, dispensing medication, especially workplace first aid. It's very, very clear, even the law is very clear, that we should not dispense medication to people who you know, this is not my family. So should you need to put medication in your kit then for your home use, where you already have the prescription and the doctor has given you permission, then it should be medication that is clearly marked in terms of expiry date, and so that you can be able to even call your doctor and say, I'm running out of these meds, what should I do? You can fill your prescription again. We do not advocate for self-medication, especially for children and elderly persons. It's quite something that you need to think about.
All right.
Yeah.
How prepared do you think Kenyan families are at the moment with these first aid kits and emergency kits?
I think we are not so prone to very major emergencies. So we have a relaxed attitude. And so one of the things that would compel people is listen more to the weather updates. Just learn that things are changing. There's a lot of things that are, making, disasters to be a little bit more serious than before. Places where we had no flooding, we have massive flooding. So we need to be keen on this and start to realize that what couldn't happen to us could happen. We're not prone to hurricanes or typhoons or that kind of extreme weather, but we are now prone to flooding, and we need to be keen on this now and start to prepare ourselves. I think a lot of people have this, happy-go-lucky attitude to safety in emergencies.
Yeah. And of course, then also learning how to use the things is very important.
Yes,
so it doesn't matter
is.
if you have a first aid kit and then you don't know what to do with it.
True.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, but I would also, like to encourage and say having a first aid kit is better than having none at all.
Of course.
And, even better, should you know how to use the equipment, even better, should you know how to, if it's stopping bleeding, what is it that you need to do? Is it applying pressure? If you have to improvise the bandages, do you know how to improvise them? Even though we are cautious about improvising gloves and things that need to protect you from other diseases. If you have any first aid materials or leaflets in your first aid kit, some information can get outdated. So we also want you to constantly check that you're within date. So sometimes you can panic and forget what you're supposed to do. When you have this little booklet or leaflet in your first aid kit, someone will be able to read through and assist you. But the goal of first aid is to get you to emergency help as quickly as possible. So, and we only do what we are trained. That's a principle. So we also want to say that whether you have a first aid kit or not, the key here is to recognize what is acute, what is serious, and what needs quickly to be referred for medical assistance.
All right.
Yes.
And then, of course, when one has children, then there's a lot, even more dynamics to take care of with that. What would you say would be your biggest pointers for preparing for any sort of emergency and a kit for any sort of emergency, particularly for your children?
I would say, for example, now we have long and longer holidays, and this December holiday is quite long. So most of the incidences will happen at home. The home has more risks for children because we have chemicals that we have put within reach. We have fire, we have children, living in, very high flats, falling from there. We have electrocution. I would say with children, prevention is the best. And with children, most of the issues would be to do with a child having difficulty breathing, maybe because something has happened to them before they had a fall or they have ingested some poison. So with children, we need parents to be very keen on recognizing that your child is changing. Maybe they are becoming dull or they're having unusual behavior and you need to refer. For children, we don't advocate for a lot of, time to be taken in between referring and taking care of the child. There's a very thin line between first aid and saving your child's life, and that is something that needs early diagnosis, early treatment.
Right.
Yes.
You've touched on fires, and of course, this January usually tends to be quite dry, typically, which also would sort of almost encourage some fires to spread even further than maybe necessary if precautions are well taken care of. What would be your tips then as far as safety, as far as fire is concerned?
With fires, we have to check our home area first. What is it that in your home that can cause fire? Where is your stove placed? Do you have a lot of flammables around it? Do you know how to put out an oil fire in the kitchen? Do you know how to, when you, for example, if you're cooking and, sometimes if you're really using high heat, sometimes it catches fire. So the goal is here to know not to throw water to cover, to smother the fire. And there's so many things in the home, like overloading sockets and they're on the carpet and they heat up and you can have an electrical fire starting in the home. And so with a fire, unless you're able to combat it, some of the tips we would give you is, if you're not able to combat it, evacuate your family and close all the doors behind you to slow down the spread of the fire. Do not attempt to go back again to remove anything. If you have left it, you have left it. And so if the fire starts and you're able to raise the alarm and evacuate your family, we must practice with our families. How would we evacuate if there was a fire? Maybe I live on the 4th floor and the 3rd floor is burning. We need to always be conscious and, you know, safety conscious. And some of the things we can do is also train our children. If there is a fire, or if this happens, or if you smell gas, don't, you know, put on the light. Don't try to, don't attempt to light the gas. Those kinds of caution need to be, you know, given to not only our children, also house help. If you have someone, maybe she's come from the countryside, she doesn't know the smell of gas, it's good to start training, you know, your house help early, so that we can prevent some of these fires.
All right. Well, maybe Flora, you can give us then your final advice as far as just preparing for the brand new year. Let's avoid all sorts of accidents if we don't have to have them. Maybe you can share your final tips with us.
I think the holidays are a time for excess. And we'll talk about alcohol consumption, and I'll also talk about fatigue.
Right.
Driving and, you know, long hours, long roads, driving the family to the countryside, coming back.
Yeah.
And I would say that you need to take breaks, adequate breaks between your drives. Stop for lunch, you know, refresh your mind. Stop for a power nap on the road, 30 minutes or so.
Yeah,
Don't
especially
drive.
for those of you coming back, you know, this weekend, getting ready for
Especially
school
those
opening.
ones. True.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of, you know, excess. People, you know, do tend to drink, go to the swimming pool, to the ocean, swim with alcohol in your system. So many dangers. So would advocate for you to have, you know, moderate fun in a moderate atmosphere. And if you must drink, then don't go swimming, those kinds of things. And also, as we open the new year, we also want to encourage people to come for training, because I think training is everything. Whether you have the first aid kit in your car and you don't know how to use each of those bandages, it's a challenge. So for us, we want to encourage you to come to our training institute, or wherever you can get good training. Get training. You will save someone's life. Yeah.
And just again, you can remind us about the training. How can people take part?
We have our website. If you're able to get on our website, you'll be able to find all the courses there. And that is www.krcti.ac.ke. And on that website, you'll find a number of trainings that suit your needs. If you just have 8 hours, that's enough for you to learn a life-saving skill. If you're able to take the 30 hours or so training, which is very, very comprehensive, you're also encouraged to do that. If you get on the website, you'll also find trainings for, you know, medical personnel who want to also to further their knowledge. So everybody is welcome. It's just up to you to check what suits you. I really want to encourage, especially parents and caregivers, to check the infant and child first aid. And ensure that the person taking care of your children is trained, because a lot of accidents this holiday will involve children.
All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Flora, for coming on to the show, and Happy New Year once again to you.
Thank you.
We do appreciate your time. Guys, we're going to take a short break now as we get ready for our second hour, coming to you from 9 a.m. This is Full Circle with Joy. Stay tuned as we have even more lined up for you.